episode. Mic one.
That was funny.
That's cool, mic drop. That was a cool. Well, hey guys, and thanks for joining us again. Today we're talking about each other, the dynamics with family, dealing and healing with family. What be up, mother-in-law?
Hi.
Hey, we're family. We're family.
We are
Family.
family. I got my son-in-law with me.
Oh, you see, you're good at it. You were saying last time that you just bring out the rhymes. The rhymes just flow from you. What?
It helps that was a famous song back in the day, right?
But you're so creative. You changed that up at the end there. I got my son-in-law with me right on the fly. But that's awesome. I think it's an important
Ready
topic.
to be free.
Come on now.
And don't you flee.
Oh, don't stop her. Carry
It's
on.
just you and me.
Son-in-law is glorious.
It's so funny. Eden gave me that same look as I was doing them.
She gets it from her dad. She gets it from her dad.
Yep.
Well, family dynamics is something we're all going to have to learn to deal with. We're all having to deal with it. We're all born into family ecosystems. So I think it's an important topic for us. Why don't you kick us off? What do you think about dealing and healing with family? We've certainly been through it, me and you, but also you and your family. What do you think?
Yeah. So with me, and it's so funny. I struggled because I didn't even know I was going through depression. But now that I look back on it, it was definitely depression. I think I've had it since I was 8 years old from the trauma, that I experienced at 8 years old. So, but I didn't know. So as I'm looking back though, when I was like out of control emotions, that's, a product of being in trauma and depression, just being sad all the time. And I didn't know why I was sad. Why am I sad? And so in my marriage, Bill was like, snap out of it. I'm like, if it was that easy, I would do it. But it's not easy when you're going through depression and anxiety and, all the other things that go with it. Procrastination and all those things that lead you to staying stuck. And so the healing part with my family, it had to start with me. So I had to start healing myself before I can even be receptive of my family helping me, right? But I remember after Bill, he did go to counseling with me, and we just unfortunately didn't have the right counselors, but we've had great counselors in and out of our marriage and our divorce. And then coming back when we came back from our divorce, going to couples counseling, even though we weren't a couple, but as a family, we decided to get back together as a family to do right for the kids. And then in that time, the healing part was good because we had an outside therapist helping us and giving us that feedback we needed that we couldn't do on our own. So that's huge. That therapy with a certified counselor was huge. And he learned that, I can't tell her to snap out of it. I got to show her and be with her. And so as we progress and now he knows, now we know what's going on. He goes, do you need time? And he'll, like, his way of showing, your love languages, his way was doing for me. So that showed his love for me. And then mine is gift giving. So he gets gifts and I get food, which is a gift. So he likes to, feed me. So I think knowing how you express to each other your language of love helps when you're going through a healing process. Knowing each other, having those deep conversations that say, hey, this didn't work. What can we do to make it work? And we have to sit down and have that powwow and say, okay, these are my likes and my dislikes. And you have to set your boundaries. And in an argument, if you're going to keep using your I statements. I feel sad when you say that. If you keep on, I'm going to have to walk away because I I don't need to hear that right now. So using your assertive communication is big, and that leads to the, because you got to be able to communicate before you can heal, right?
Mm.
So you have to know that way of communication before you can lead to the healing part. And so now Bill and I, we know each other. We've separated all that now, and right now, it's really good, and we know when to stop. Stop the
Yeah.
madness, right? I pull the imaginary red flag, and then he knows, and then we can come back to it, because it's not all peaches and cream all the time, because we're human beings. We're here on earth still. We're not in the kingdom of God. So we have to know our boundaries within each other. And then that leads to the healing part, where you're comfortable, you're loved with that other person, and then you can move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that really does. It's a process of getting to know yourself and what works for you. Otherwise, you don't have anything to communicate. And then effectively communicating that and setting up parameters that it can work for each other with. So because we can't get it like unless we've been through it, you can't really get it. I would have also thought that you could just snap out of depression until I was depressed myself and I realized, what the heck, I keep snapping and I'm not getting out of it. So, unless a person's been through it, they're going to rely on our communication about what it's like, maybe facts and stuff as well to back it up. So that's really cool that you and Bill have done this, and that you're in a good space now, and you've both grown and expanded as a result. I mean, you two are pretty opposite, just like me and you are pretty opposite. And I'm quite a lot like Bill, as a matter of fact. But
Yeah.
maybe we're put in each other's lives for that very reason, so that we can expand and learn to see things from different angles and learn to communicate in these ways that we wouldn't have had to if we were just always thinking the same kinds of thoughts.
And humor, because people look at us and like, you joke, but that's our heal. That was our healing, was having to laugh about it after all the hurt. After all the hurt, it's like, no, laugh. And that laughter, people don't get what laughter does to you. It creates goodness, it creates happiness, it creates the good endorphins, and it just makes you that natural high. So whenever you can laugh. And Bill and I just have this sync humor that people don't get, and we love each other. And I've tried to pull away from the insult part of it, but sometimes he knows that it doesn't. I mean, we both tell each other if it offends us, but we're to the point where it doesn't, because it's just funny. And we try to eliminate the insults and just be funny, and that works for us. And people still don't get it. They look outside looking in and like, how do you get it? Because we have our own communication, and that's the key.
Your own love language. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And when you're busy trying to establish that mutual love language, like it took you guys a while to do, you said that it was helpful to have a third party, an outside third person who could kind of speak into that. And I'm even
Right.
wondering within
Well,
our lives that is
yeah.
God. God is that outside perspective that can speak into both of our lives and therefore allow us to expand beyond what we knew before.
And I think that's what I'm experiencing now with Bill, that God knows us and he shows us in ways that we don't even know, but we know. But we know because we feel it, and we sense it.
Yeah, you can sense that. But if a person doesn't have God, like imagine, okay, let's try to speak to family members now who, let's say, they have a kid, a child who's going through mental health struggles, and maybe there isn't that communication gap. Without, maybe the kid doesn't know God or whatever. If there isn't that common denominator, what advice would you give to parents who are struggling with their loved one?
Well, my go-to is a therapist, because you sometimes need that third party to say, to be objective enough to say the truth, right? In the most good way and loving way. And therapists are trained to do that. So for me, that helped a lot. was having that third party, and that helped Bill and I. He wasn't my son, but he was my husband. But and also with my children, they went to, through the realms of the divorce, they went to play therapy, and that helped so much. They were able to act out whatever in playing with, the therapist watching and interacting with them. So to me, that was a godsend, because it really helped them to let out what they were feeling, watching their mom and dad go through this horrible, terrible divorce and custody battles, one of the worst custody battles I could imagine. And they needed that. So play therapy helped them big time. And that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, you said that you found good therapists and not good therapists though. Like, how do you distinguish? Because one of them was giving you the advice to just leave Bill, right? They were like, oh,
Oh,
two different types of farm animals, they're pig and sheep. You don't belong in the same farm.
forgot about
So how
that.
do you know?
Yeah, no, that's where you just say, God, send me your goodness. But you have to try. You have to try, because I did learn from that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did learn from that bad that you don't, you go seek the second opinion. If it doesn't feel right with you as a therapist, then by all means don't continue. That's what I would say. That was unfortunate, but was it? Because God's plan, even though it was the most horrific plan for me, in a sense where I had to ordeal some, but that's the way God knew that I was going to get it. That I was going to follow his plan, was to make me all the way down to the bottom so that I could see it clear and start from the beginning again, right? So I always say this, the hardest time of my life was the best part of my life, because I was able to take that time and focus on what God wanted for me. And with the kids in tow, it was hard, and I wasn't getting it done, to allow me time to get closer to God, to get his word, and then have fathers. He put, oh my gosh, he put all these people in your path. And so that's what I say to the parents: give it to God, let him handle it for you, trust him, and know he's going to put people in your path to help you through this. I promise you, from what he's done for me, I promise you, if you give it completely to him, he will. And boy, he put Father Scott in my path. He put my sister and her love from God to me. So with those two in tow, and then my cousins, they were like, no, we got you, we got you, we got you. All these people coming out of the woodwork saying, we got you. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? That was God's love.
Yeah.
And so I say, be patient, keep in prayer yourself, and know that, find your way back to him, and he will take care of you. He will put people in your path at the exact moment you need them there. I promise you. So that's what I say to that.
Yeah, his ways don't always look the way that we anticipate them looking. Like, aligning with God's path doesn't necessarily mean that money's falling from the sky and it's rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes God will send us, like the therapist who tells you the wrong thing, so that you can know actually what the truth is within yourself, and then you know. And so, like with depression, it's really cool, and anxiety and your breakup, it's cool that your family came around you in these sorts of ways. And then it's different a little bit with people in psychosis, because I mean, we both had it from the opposite perspectives. You had the depression and the anxiety, and I fully kind of lost touch with mutual consensus reality. So it's one thing to help people when they're depressed and they're down and they can't do things. But when your son-in-law is in complete psychosis and has lost the plot with what's going on in mutual consensus reality, I wonder if those same mechanisms could be at work now as we're starting to look back in hindsight. And it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't easy at the time. I wonder if there was an expansive process in I was learning the wrong ways to go, and you guys were learning the wrong ways to handle it. And we've both kind of come out better as a result. And we've both been more attuned with God as a result. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, that was crazy because I went into full protective mama bear mode, and I lost sight of what you were going through because I was in protective mode. And that's not a good thing because,
Fight or flight. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so I wasn't using my prefrontal cortex. I was using all my feelings protecting my daughter, which was your wife, watching you go through all that. Um, so I definitely made some mistakes for sure because I was in full protective mode. And watching you make these choices and not fully understanding you were in psychosis. You know, as an outsider looking in, come on, it's a choice. It's a choice.
There
You
we
know,
go. Snap out of
back
it, right?
to
Yeah.
back to that
Yeah.
thing that I hated said to me was snap out of it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's happening to you. You can't snap. You know, we
Yeah.
flip the lens and we forget to look at how it really is,
Mm.
right? And so I should have known, no, he's going through something. And so I did finally give it to God and give it to prayer. And that's where things help. But watching my daughter not know what to do and feeling, you know, that helplessness from her because what do you do when you don't know? You know, we didn't know psychosis. We
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on. And so that was hard and that's a process. So we did get back to prayer. We did get back and I think I mean there was a good year when you were going through all of that, right? So
Yeah.
all we could do as parents was just be there for her
Mhm.
and then let her deal with you. So we had to step back and let her deal with you because that was you and her, but still say the prayers and still be there to support her and the two babies, Kalani and Eden, right? To make sure that they're okay and they were provided for and stuff. So we took on that, we're just going to help here and then watch. But and I think time, I mean, like you asked me what heals it. I think time. You have to give time to sort
Mm.
that all out and let it play out, for lack of better words. Yeah, you have to see how it's going, but never stop the praying, never stop having God help us through that. And I think he did. And I think what helped me is that I had to detach myself from being the protective mom and let you and Bree sort it out. And we had to take a step back. I want to hope and recall that that's what we did. Um, I know we said some. I think what we need to be careful of, and I wish I could go back. Watch what we say out loud in those kind of situations. You
Mm.
know, better to stay. I wish I would have been more humble, which I'm learning, and giving it truly to God without the opinions, because sometimes those opinions are very hurtful and sometimes are not recoverable. But with God, anything is good. Anything is possible, right? With God. So you keep giving it to God. And I know that's what the process happened with us, that I kept giving it to God and he kept healing the process. And look at us now. I have to mention that someone saw us talking in one of these podcasts and said, you have such a great relationship with your son-in-law. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that amazing? God is good because
Yeah.
this this through your psychosis, there was a lot of feelings that I put first, and instead of using my prefrontal cortex and God's love. So there's some lessons there, right? So back in hindsight, I wish I would have gave it more to God and spoke less.
Wise words right there. I think that's huge because we don't really know what's going on. I mean, it's interesting just joining that with your situation with Bill, because Bill, my father-in-law, was amazing through all of this to me, or my perception is that he was amazing. And so I wonder if he learned through your depression that you can't snap out of it. He learned how to meet a person where they're at. So he was able to bring those skill sets because he couldn't relate to your depression and he couldn't relate to my psychosis. So
Right.
maybe for you, because you could relate to depression, if I was really depressed, you would have been a rock star. But because it
Right.
was something that you couldn't relate to, then you went into this different kind of mode. So maybe that is,
Mhm.
and it's hard for family members because maybe a person's doing dangerous things. Like I was doing dangerous things. And so what do? You want to protect, and yet you can't really coerce and you can't try to manipulate the system because ultimately it's in the hands of a God that's way bigger than we are and has these bigger
Mhm.
sorts of plans. So yeah, so maybe it is letting go and letting God to a certain extent.
Right. And what I love about Bill's personality, he's so neutral. And that balances me out a lot
Yeah,
because his neutrality and um his he has a really unique relationship with nature.
yeah,
It just embodies him, where it's just for lack of better words, just down to he's like that down to earth guy
yeah,
who's just neutral. And other than when he's mad, because when he's mad, that's a whole different ballgame. But what on the most part, and the way he connects is so just chill, right?
yeah. Just chill.
It's so opposite
Yeah,
of
yeah,
excuse me, he's so laid back.
yeah.
And I'm so like, and he's like chill.
Opposites attract.
So,
Yeah,
right. So I think that lends to goodness as well, it just and balance. So
yeah.
there's a balance there with that kind of um aura, so to speak.
Yeah, and maybe it does come from his time spent in nature that he knows that there's a rhythm to everything, there's a cycle to everything. He can maybe let things go a little bit more because if you're taking a tree and you're talking to the tree and yelling at it, trying to get it to produce fruit, it's probably not going to produce the fruit. So maybe there can be an
Yeah.
open-handedness that can come with that
Yeah.
wisdom. I don't know if that always works. I don't know. I mean, there must be times where family should get directly involved
Right.
and kind of take the reins. But if we think that Jesus's family tried to do that, like the very Mary who was visited by all the angels and the shepherds, as soon as Jesus started acting outside of the box or outside of her comfort zone, she tried to take charge of him because the Bible says she thought that he was out of his mind. And so, like, I wonder where God's ways of dealing with things can seem crazy to humans, and when we should let it go and just kind of be neutral, or when there really is a time that we should also take charge. Because, like, I don't know if that's always wise to just let things unfold. What do you think?
Well, so coupled with like in my case with my depression, it was the therapy. I mean, I had a psychiatrist when I was like the first months of my depression, the situational depression. So I had a therapist, I had a psychiatrist, and I had Father Scott. So I had the spiritual. So I had three people guiding me through God's love. So, and I
Yeah.
just talk about my therapist. I couldn't afford, I didn't have insurance. I couldn't afford it. He said, pay me $20 or $10 even, pay me what you can. We'll make a list of all your visits, and then you pay me back when you can. And I did.
Mm,
So I mean, that's a miracle, right? Like I
yeah.
got the help I needed. And then the psychiatrist, same thing. He let me see him for $10 and gave me the medication I needed at that time to help with that severe depression from that situation, right?
Wow.
So, like, and then Father Scott being there, and then that was the guide to helping my sister heal with me as far as, because we've always had a contentious relationship, her being 8 years older than I. She wanted to be my mom, and we, didn't have a sister relationship for all my life. It felt like a mother daughter relationship, but I already had a mother. So there was resentment on my side. And so Father Scott kind of like got in the middle of that and translated Mary what she's trying to say, because my sister's the most faithful, loving person I've ever met as far as knowing God. But on the outside, she's rough and tough. And I all my feelings are all on the outside because that's who I am. And I'm so sensitive, super sensitive, and super rough, right? Made us understand each other's ways and languages and love languages. And so, to this day, I think that was a catalyst. I mean, Father Scott really mended our, I don't know how to describe what this is, our roughness to
You
each
think of
other.
those, yeah, one of those, yeah. Those need
Yeah.
mending.
So, yeah. So, and Father Scott was a lot like my personality, but because he was so religious, my sister respected the religious aspect of it. So she's like, wow. So someone who can be like my sister and be smart and be educated and be like my sister's personality. So I know that that was what she needed to see for us to mend, and we did. I mean, it's still mending, but we still now have that. She gets me now like she never got me before. She would never get me.
Yeah.
Her eyes wouldn't open up to it, but I think this process helped her do that. And to this day, I mean, I love my sister. I'm like I said before, she was there for me when I needed her the most. And her love of God showed me the way. So is that not God?
Yeah.
And to this day, I mean, we've had rare bouts. We're not like this anymore. And I had a birthday that I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that I loved her because of just being her and in my life, and what she's done for me. I'll be forever grateful. When someone's rescued you out of a deep, dark sadness,
Mhm.
you just have to be grateful and forever grateful, and knowing that, whatever you do, I don't care because you were there for me.
Yeah.
And that changed my mindset of like, why you always criticizing me? Showed me love, and I'm grateful, and I thank you. And
Yeah.
that opened my eyes to like, love is love, in whatever way it comes.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And that's huge. Your
Yeah.
heart feels it. So let your heart be your guide, because that's God.
Yeah, God speaks in our hearts, and we remember the good things that people did for us in those times, and we remember the things that they did that weren't so good in those times. And I think so, maybe in conclusion there with how do we know whether to get involved in our loved ones' lives and kind of force something or not is through counsel, through wise counsel. You found Father Scott and you found your sister and these other people who came into your life, which is very cool. So I used to work with a program called IHOT, in-home outreach team for treatment-resistant people who, none of them who wanted conventional help. So they had two acronyms for you guys who are listening, if you're family members, that helped us learn to deal with people in psychosis or in other situations where they didn't want help. And the first one is LEAP. It's by Dr. Amador. So the L stands for listen. Listen deeply to what they're trying to say and maybe even what lies beneath that a little bit. E first is empathize. Empathize with the emotion undergirding it. Even if they're saying some random out there stuff about aliens living in the apartment upstairs or something, you could emphasize with maybe the fear in that or the concern. So E is for empathize. A is for agree. Agree where you can. Even if you disagree with 97%, find little points of agreement because that builds rapport. And that relationship is one of the most solid things moving forward, that relationship. And then P is partner. Partner with them in their own goals instead of trying to force our goals because you're probably talking on different levels. If you partner with them in one of their goals, you'll find that life will teach them the lessons that they need. And you're walking alongside them, supporting them instead of trying to pull them along. So that's the first one. And then in terms of your communication with Bill and just developing the solid communication, the second acronym is from a technique called motivational interviewing. And it's an OARS acronym. O is ask open-ended questions that allow the person to carry on talking. A is for affirmations, giving little positive encourages like, wow, that took real resilience. Oh, that's really brave of you. These kinds of things which are fuel to the fire. R is reflections. So reflect back to them what you hear them saying, because maybe you've got it completely wrong. Or if you've got it right, then it allows them to feel like they're being heard. Like you were saying, some people just didn't get you. And so when people reflect back, it's just like, oh, they get me. And then finally, the S is for summaries. So after they've said a few things, you can summarize maybe the threads that are tying them all together so that they're starting to see the deeper levels of communication. So I think those two acronyms can help family members when they're trying to reach a loved one who doesn't really want the conventional supports or something like that. Do you have any thoughts on those?
No, I like that. The affirmations, because that's my love language. And so when I was going through my deep depression, my sister knew. She's like, get a job at the zoo. And then she was thinking for when the kids come on the weekends, you could have a place to take them because you get in the zoo free. And so, but then I became I went to the wild animal park to become a tour guide. And just the affirmation of applause at the end of something I was doing in my depression was so healing for me. Like, I'm not this low life person. I can do a tour and people enjoy it and I can bring joy. And that's through, that's through God. So God was working his wonders big time. And so that affirmation was huge. Like getting the applause was the affirmation I needed. Like, oh, good. I can do something. I'm not a low life. I can have a job and make ends meet for myself and my kids, right? So
you'd be so good at those tours with the announcer, the radio announcer.
Yeah.
You see, I just gave you an
so
affirmation because I was listening.
So the gift, the gifts from God and so I like that. The reflections and the summary, I think that is what we did do in the people that were around me did do that without even knowing that. So that's huge.
Sometimes we embody this stuff intuitively. So yeah, I think just to summarize here, like both of us, both within your depression, where it was in the lowest points actually where you gained an understanding of the truth and this depth of relationship that you wouldn't have had before. And now you've come back to a restored relationship with Bill, restored relationship with your sister, which is better than it started. And the same thing with me and our relationship. So we started off just regular mother and son-in-law, and then there was a big old mess in the middle here. But through that mess, it's actually made me a better person because I cut out a lot of that darkness that was trying to creep into my life. I realized through the power of God, and it also opened you up to a different way of seeing things. And maybe in its own way has brought you closer to an understanding of God that transcends boxes. And now we've come back to a restored relationship, a podcast, and just a way of life and being in the world that's better than it was before. So that's just hope for someone who's been through it and who's going through it. That something could come out of this that's better than you could possibly imagine right now.
Was there a question there? I missed it.
No, it was just a mic drop moment.
Okay.
Drop the mouse.
And I was
the mouse has been
pick
dropped.
it up.
There we go. You
pick up the mic.
Go ahead and take it away. Let's bring it to a close here. What are some final thoughts that you have, my mother-in-law, on all of this topic of dealing and healing with family?
The first thing that just came to mind, let go, let God. Let go, let God. And it's so funny how you said we had that mess in the middle and, it just kind of poofed in the air and then it came back because now I'm the different person with my conviction with God. And now you have your renewed conviction with God.
Right.
And so look at us now. So that's got to say something about how God works in mysterious and wondrous ways.
Yes, he does. Come on, bring it on. And it isn't even finished yet, I tell you what. We still got a grand old story ahead of us. So much love for you, my mother-in-law. Much love for this podcast. This has been fantastic. Thanks, viewers, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye. That's cool, mic drop. That was a cool